In the lands of Mordor, a ring was forged. One ring to rule them all. Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back. It is your boy, Jackie Fish, with the cringy intros. And today we have an extremely special video. We're going to be going ahead and taking a look at the updated version of the map that the Rise of Mordor team is currently working on. It's been about 5 to 6 months since I've last checked in, so it'll be really cool to kind of see the updated version of this campaign map and kind of see the progress that they are doing alongside everything else with the new factions we've been getting, with the new awesome Rohan and Dwarven units and everything else. As well as that, I have an extremely special interview with one of the lead OG creators, Mr.Jox, who was kind enough to jump on, and he's basically going to be running through all the misconceptions with how Attila, the Attila map is moddable and what you can do with it, as well as the visual side, and also as well as that he's going to be talking a lot more about the tool that he uses, or they're using, to go ahead and allow the AI to understand what exactly is going on in Rise of Mordor, so that, you know, even though you're playing on a completely different map from Europe, the AI will still know that Minas Tirith is west and, you know, Mordor is to the east, and so on and so on. So if you were a non-believer like me, thinking that the Total War Attila map was completely unmoddable and we'd never get these amazing overhaul mods, then make sure you tune in to the interview after this little bit where we look around the map. I'll obviously leave timestamps down below in the description as well, so you guys can skip ahead to the questions that you guys are particularly interested in. But I highly recommend you go ahead and stick around to that interview, because it's absolutely awesome, getting a real good insight to the modding side and exactly, you know, how this stuff is created. So boom, let's go ahead and zoom out. So the map has come a long way since we last looked at it. I think the last time we looked at it, there was like this coastline that was done, and that was literally about it. You know, it was the very beginning of the Rise of Mordor map, and since then they have been working extremely hard. I mean, even just this coastline has been a lot more buffed up with kind of cliffs and, you know, more terrain being added in, just adding a lot more life to the campaign map itself. Right now you're obviously going to see kind of the map of the original Total War Attila kind of printed on where all the settlements are placed. You can pretty much ignore a lot of these settlements. They'll be completely changed and removed when we get, you know, obviously when the map gets a little bit further on, but for now it's not just that important. So obviously already a lot more terrain has been added, a lot more mountains have really fleshed out the map over here at Minas Tirith. As you can see, Minas Tirith has a nice little slot here ready to go with more farmland and roads coming out of it. You can see the Minas Tirith mountains going across, and hopefully we'll see some beacons being risen along here all the way over to Rohan. Again, you can see a lot more detail in the campaign map being added. The small parts like this really do add a lot to the campaign map. But these will go all the way over to the west for the Gondorian Mountains, and again, a lot more detail being added in, like waterfalls and forests and other stuff like that. Obviously, we've got some mountains down here, and again, just kind of cleaning up a lot of the coastline here, kind of really fleshing out the foundations of the campaign map itself. Then obviously into the north, we have the beginnings of Caandros right here. We have Olziliov obviously is not in quite yet, but I imagine obviously it'll be completely custom models and other really exciting stuff. We also have the beginning of the Mordor Mountains and the black earth that lays beneath them. So you can see Mordor has had a little bit of love added to it, but obviously it's still very much a work in progress. Kind of, I think getting the main kind of, you know, building blocks of it is really, really important. So you got the Mordor Mountains going all the way around. You also have obviously the mountain, and obviously we have the Black Gate as well. I think this is like the first part of these kind of custom assets that eventually are going to find their way in the game in so many different forms, which again is super exciting, having, you know, that custom Minas Tirith model and other stuff like that. And you can already start to see that, you know, they are coming up with some good ideas. You know, obviously this will just be a settlement that you'll be able to click on and defend, so, you know, this zone of control will be kind of filtering its way all around Mordor, so one cannot just simply walk into Mordor. You're going to have to go through the Black Gate, which I think is a very, very exciting way of doing things. We also do see the marshes over here as well, the dead marshes that we are, you know, that we can see right here, that are kind of scattering around. So again, really nice and fitting. Down to the south, we obviously have the deserts of Arun, which, you know, will be kind of very vast and dangerous without not that many roads. We obviously have the great harbors of Umber over here. So again, that's kind of getting its kind of, you know, beginning stages of the map itself. So really nice stuff there. We have the kind of the crossing stones and the islands over there. Obviously, we'll have, you know, lots more stuff over there. And then obviously we go north. We have the amazing tower tower, the tower itself, the Tower of Orthanc, holding tool in the ground. Obviously, this is just a placeholder, but you can start to see kind of, mines being added in and stuff like that to really represent what we're going to be seeing on the campaign map as we go further through. When we have the Mountains of Moria, I believe these have been having a lot of work done on them, and you can see kind of they're really starting to be fleshed out as well. So yeah, the Misty Mountains up here going very, very vast all the way over to the north, and again you can kind of see a lot more of these details, kind of appearing in the campaign map since the last time we went ahead and checked them out. Again in the north as well, obviously the mountains themselves will go all the way over to the Lonely Mountain, and we have kind of a few more over here in the north. So yeah, I mean, just already so much more work has been added in, and the campaign map is looking really, really good already just on these small kind of, these paths. Obviously got Yandu in here as well. Moving all the way north, kind of going through. Obviously, we'll have Amon Hen probably around here, and you can kind of see kind of where they block some stuff out. I assume a lot of these things where we're seeing kind of this type of texture is kind of where stuff is being placed, and yeah, it's obviously to help them out quite nicely. But yeah, I mean, these are some pretty huge mountains that will look absolutely awesome once they are finally done. And then I think we obviously have some more mountains over on this left-hand side, kind of filtering out that. Obviously we'll have Dane and other factions like that kind of scattering around, but yeah, I mean, that's overall really the map. Obviously this is not the map that we're going to be taking a look at, but yeah, I mean, this is pretty much kind of how it looks at the moment. I think they've done an amazing job really stepping up. The campaign map itself is looking awesome. I think probably next to them is going to be starting to add a lot more forests and a lot more life like that to the campaign map. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this down below in the comments. And now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to jump over to the interview I had with Jox, and he's going to be talking, as I said at the beginning of the video, all about the common misconceptions of Attila map modding, more about how the visual map modding works, and also how the campaign AI is going to handle it, and how it's completely possible to get the AI to, fully understand exactly what is going on. So let's go ahead and jump over that and see exactly what Jox has to say. Okay guys, so we are now here with Jox, the OG creator of Rise of Mordor, the man who was there when the rings themselves were forged, and today we're going to dive in and basically talk a little bit more about the misconceptions of Attila map modding, the actual visual map that you guys would have already seen in the first part of the video, and then finally we'll talk about kind of the underlying thing that I think a lot of people don't really know about, where it kind of retains to the AI and how that will function on a complete custom map that isn't Europe. So hey Jox, how's it going, man?
Hey man, thanks for having me. Thanks for providing me the opportunity to clarify things about the campaign map and the campaign in general. So I guess I'll start with the most misconception, the one that people have is that campaign map is unmoddable. That's completely untrue. You can edit the campaign map in the most straightforward way you can imagine it. So if you want a Middle Earth map, you'll have it. You just have to put a lot of effort to make it happen. The other misconception is that campaign map modding is different for different games. That's also not quite true. The CA had reworked the campaign map system in Rome 2, and since that game and onwards, it hasn't really changed much. So theoretically, you can take the Rome 2 map and port it to the Warhammer, though I would suggest against it because it doesn't really come well with the CA policy. So yeah, let's get started.
Yeah, awesome, cool. I think that's just something that I think we needed to clear, or not we, but people needed to have cleared up, because I was one of those people who were just like, oh, you can never, because no one's done it, so I was like, oh well, obviously it just can't happen then, but obviously that makes a lot of sense, and I think I'll clear things up for a lot of people. So yeah, do you want to move on and talk a little bit more about the visual side of things now that you guys have obviously been working on the Rise of Mordor team, creating that custom map of Middle Earth, and just maybe talk a little bit about how, what is involved in creating a visual map. So, obviously not talking about the AI stuff quite yet, but just more so, what's involved with, creating Barad-dûr, and what's involved with creating Mordor and Gondor, and actual just kind of a visual representation of Middle Earth, or, any map.
So the campaign should be distinguished from the campaign map. It's basically two different components, and campaign map is a small part from the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is being the campaign itself. Of course, one of the most obvious components of the campaign map itself is the visual part of it. And when we speak of the Middle-earth map, the first thing that comes to your mind is the visuals, like the Gondor itself, all of those famous iconic places, Mordor, especially its terrain, all that kind of stuff. And that component is referred to as the campaign tile map. So by the name of the tile map, there comes the concept of one big map composed of tiles. So where tiles are, pieces like puzzles of one entire picture. And those puzzles, they can be of any size, like they can be 2 and 2, they can be 4 and 2, 4 and 4. And those tiles, they are just basic building blocks of the bigger campaign map. And tiles usually mean that you can have multiple types of them. So one is grass, another one is desert, and so on. And you then compose them together. You can slightly modify how they tie together, and that makes the visual map. And then of course it combines with some extra stuff like height map that defines the terrain elevation. Then it comes with the props like visual models on the campaign map, and then it comes with extra another type of tiles that are mountain. They are also referred to as the mask tile. So it is just the mountain mesh that is placed on top of other tiles. So if you remember the mountains in Attila, Rome 2 and other games, they are like a model put on the terrain. That's not the actual height map. That's why it looks decent. It doesn't look like a stretched terrain. So yes, that's the visual map.
Okay, awesome. So you're pretty much like an architect, and you're having to like put all these components together to create, what we do see. And people can go and see the development of this over on the Rise of Mordor YouTube channel, which I'll link down below in the description. You guys over there do have people working on the campaign map, art, custom settlements, map making, all that stuff. So definitely a place to be for that stuff, for sure.
Yes, indeed. We are streaming the process of making the visual campaign map. And if you are interested, how is that even possible? Well, the secret is that CA has released the raw data for the Attila vanilla campaign map, as well as Thrones of Britannia. Those both games have the raw files. It means that you can open the raw files, you can edit them, and you can then process them to game-ready format. And they also supplied us with a tool known as Terry. It's located under Tweak. Tweak is a tool that has multiple different plugins, like variant editor for editing units, database editor, and the Terry itself. So for some games like Warhammer, Three Kingdoms, Troy, the Terry either doesn't exist or it's just a different tool. So there are 2 different Terry tools. One Terry tool is used for terrain editing, that's used in Warhammer, Troy, Three Kingdoms, and the other Terry is a tool for making the visual map to create the campaign and battle tile maps. And the oldest from Attila Terry tool, it doesn't exist in Warhammer. So if you'll be interested in making a visual map in newer games like Troy or Three Kingdoms, you just have to keep that in mind that the Attila approach would not work. So you have to find your way into making the visual map. But to your luck, it's far more simpler than the hex map. So yeah, we use that tool. We are streaming the process of creating our visual map on our YouTube channel, and you can keep up with the progress on it.
Awesome. So yeah, do you want to now move on to kind of the more, I guess, complex discussion that we're going to have today, a bit more about how, because a lot of people say, I think the new kind of misconception, which hopefully we've cleared up in this video, is like, you can edit the campaign map in Total War Attila, but the AI won't know what to do, so it will never work. I see that quite a lot on Reddit and stuff like that. So yeah, do you want to dive into, I guess, a bit more about what you've been doing with that, to try and, I guess, get the AI to understand that, oh, Minas Tirith's over here, that's not Constantinople, that's Minas Tirith, and the Woodland Realm is over there, and yeah, so you actually get a functioning campaign at the end of the day, rather than the AI roaming around like a headless chicken.
Okay, so let me demonstrate you the hex mob so you understand the concept behind it a little bit better. So you might have heard that we are working on the tool to make the hex mob editing possible. So the hex mob is a mob that is composed of cells that are in a shape of a hexagon. So if we go here, zoom in really close, you can really see that that's the cell and it has a shape of a hexagon. So that's where the hex mob name comes from. It's quite common in games to use hex mobs for navigation of agents on the map. So for example, if you have a unit, a campaign agent like a spy or general standing in this hex cell, you'll have to command it to move from point A to point B, and it's going to select the path from this cell to this cell depending on the cost of this cell and all of the cells that comes on this path. So why the hex mob, right? Why can we use the square? Well, the reason for that is because when you're in the hex cell, the movement of your character is far more natural. So you have 6 directions to move instead of 4 directions in a cube map, I guess that's what you can call it. So yeah, that's the reason why we have the hex mob. Now, what this mob is responsible for is it basically used to define the pathfinding of the campaign map. So you have Middle Earth, the agents, the AI has to acknowledge it. It has to understand that here we have sea, it's not mountains. So if we have river here, let me enable the red layer. So if we have river here, the AI has to understand that crossing this river is really costly, and it should rather opt to move somewhere through the land to get from point A to point B. So the first thing that the hex mob defines is the pathfinding, but that's not all there is. There's also the impossible layer. This layer basically tells where it tells what parts of the campaign map are not supposed to be walkable, at all, inaccessible. Then you have roads. Roads are used to better understand the cheaper ways to traverse the map. Then you have bridges, coasts, all that stuff is also used by the Pathfinder. But what's more important is that you have regions layer. And this regions layer is what you think it is. It defines regions. It's not like back in Medieval 2 where you had to paint the usual map in Photoshop and call it regions map, and the game will just load it and work just fine. No, in Attila and starting from Rome to regions map is a part of the hex mob, and it is also used by the Pathfinder because it evaluates some costs from moving from one region to the other. So I'm not exactly sure why they need that. The CA, but that's the kind of stuff that we saw in the binary files. So to make the hex map modding possible, we had to reverse engineer the binary files that encode the data that you are seeing here in this tool. So this tool is supposed to allow you, the modder, to be able to create the mob that you want, and by create I mean describe it with painting features like so. So if you just take the region you want and you start painting it, and that will be your new area of your region. So you describe your campaign map with all those different layers. Also keep in mind that's not the full list of all the layers. It's still work in progress. It's not finished. And then this tool allows you to export this representation of the hex mob to game compatible files, and those files are binary files. So we first had to reverse engineer to understand the algorithms and data structures behind the hex mob, and then to understand what kind of stuff we have to represent in our tool to provide to modders to create a hex mob, all of the features required by it. And then we are also currently making, that's not finished, but we're working on it. So export takes the intermediate data, that's the data that's represented by the tool, and it converts it to game ready, as I've said, the game ready files, and then you just work with them as any other files when you mod stuff. So you either override the already existing game files if you're overriding the vanilla map, or you put them as completely new files and create a new map through the database and link all those files through the database. So the hex map, apart from what I've already told, like it has ground types that define the costs from traversing from one cell to the other. You have climates, attritions, like climates just I'm not sure what they define, because I kind of forgot that. Because that's not really important. Oh, yeah, I recalled it. So the climates are used by the UI. So when you hover over the part of the map defined by this layer, you'll see the tooltip, and that tooltip will tell you that that's the climate. I'm also sure that there are far more things than just the UI. It's just off the top of my head. Then we have attritions. There's not really much to say about it. When you are located in this cell with this attrition, it will just take either health of your unit or apply some other attritions defined by this. Regions, as I said, and then the parts that are missing at this moment is the borders. So if you have regions, if you remember the visuals of the campaign map, they have borders between the regions, and that's completely UI thing. So it doesn't really add any logic. That's what's missing. And also the settlement positions and settlement hexes are also missing at this moment. We're working on it. So for example, settlement it's not just a single point on the map. So it's not like... Okay, so the settlement is not one point. Actually, settlement is more like this. It occupies multiple cells, and the position of the settlement is defined by positions of all of the cells that belong to the settlement. And the thing about Attila, for instance, it doesn't exist in all games, but in Attila, settlement can be expanded, like it grows. Some parts of the settlement can increase in size, and that's called as the town sprawl mechanic. So settlement is not just these hexes, but also another layer that adds the cells that can be sprawled. They define how settlement can expand. I guess that's all of the parts of the hex mob, at least all of what I can remember.
Yeah, no, that was super informative. Like, I learned an absolute ton. So basically the process will be, eventually just importing the kind of representation of the visual map into this, and then basically giving the AI as much information on that map, so then it knows how to cope with it and kind of like merge them together. Like, this is like the visual map is like the top layer of the sponge, the AI is in the middle, and then you have the bottom layer, which is this kind of inferring upwards through it. So yeah, I mean, it looks absolutely amazing, and yeah, I can't wait to obviously see the future, and it's awesome to just find out all this stuff, because again, I think a lot of people just have no clue, and they're just, you know, just going forward, not realizing that, you know, stuff like this is being worked on, which is, yeah, super exciting. So I guess, is there anything else before we wrap up that you want to mention or say, or obviously, you know, go check out Rise of Mordor Discord and their YouTube channel. I'll link both down below in the description. But is there anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, that's really frustrating to see people misunderstanding the campaign. It's really frustrating to see that they think that it's impossible, that they think it's going to take you forever to make, because the amount of work we're putting into this is just tremendous. And hopefully you guys now see a better picture. Of course, that's not the entire thing about the campaign, that's just the parts of the campaign map itself. The campaign is far more bigger than this, and it also takes a lot more work than just the map. So keep that in mind.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, you obviously got, once you've done the map, you've got to figure out, like, you know, just like, you know, how the faction balancing is. You've got to figure out, you know, events. You've got, you know, economy. You've got buildings. You've got, you know, armies, snowball. There's so much to take into account. But, you know, it's something I think a lot of people are looking forward to. And yeah, I definitely can't wait to see the cities of men burn when I'm roaming the campaign map with my forces of Mordor. So yeah, massive thank you to Jox for coming on and explaining all of this to us. Hopefully a lot of you guys did find this very useful. If you did, make sure you comment down below. Obviously go check out Rise of Mordor over on Discord and also on their YouTube channel. Links to them down below in the description. And I'll see you guys in the next one.